Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description. Hello everybody. Today on cars we all forgot even existed, but we really shouldn't have, it's this, the Nissan 370Z Roadster. And in today's episode of JayEmm on Cars, I'm going to be telling you why, if you're currently on the hunt for a little bit of summer fun, this might just have to go on your shortlist. It is a rather sad state of affairs, but nevertheless true, that for a great many petrol heads here in Britain, the modern Nissan Z cars are almost entirely forgotten. And this is in spite of the fact they are cars almost tailor-made to the petrol head. For here you have vehicles with nice, meaty, naturally aspirated 6-cylinder engines driving the rear wheels through, should you want it, a manual gearbox. They came with some pretty cool features. The 370Z introduced rev match to the world, and regardless of whether you like it or not, that's a very cool thing. They also happen to be far more durable than the Porsche equivalent. There's a great aftermarket scene too, should tuning be your thing. And all round, I think they are cars that are far better to drive than they're ever given credit for. Now, the argument could be made that the 350 was a fairly popular car. I seem to recall it being a very good seller when it was new, but by the time the 370 landed, there was a big problem in the form of Big Brother, the GTR. For by the time this landed in 2009, the car on everyone's lips was the then new R35. And so, if you were a petrol head, that was the car that appealed to you. And I think there would be those out there who rather unfairly would look at the 370Z as simply the car bought by people that just can't afford a GTR. The reality is, though, they're quite different things. The GTR is much bigger, naturally turbocharged, so has more power. It also has more seats in it. All-wheel drive was always quite a bit more expensive, and as time went on, the Golf became bigger and bigger. But whenever you were to put a GTR into a group test, though it might not win, it definitely had a chance. Stick this up against a Porsche Cayman, BMW M3 and the like, and very often it would feel like the Nissan had gone into a gunfight with a rather sharp piece of mango. However, now having had the chance to sample the 350 and 370 a number of times, that seems wholly unfair, because it's actually a really good car. But until today, I'd only ever got to experience it as most people think of it, in coupe form. Oh, 3-point turn, hill start torture test. How do we do? Visibility is tricky. You sit almost impossibly low in this thing with a very, very high front end. Turning circle's pretty good. There are parking sensors in here. And this one is equipped with the 7-speed automatic gearbox, which is fairly rare to see. And I've only ever previously experienced in import cars, like the Skylines that Japan got and we didn't. And what else can I tell you about this car? Well, it is in this gorgeous shade of, I believe, deep blue pearl, and it looks spectacular. It is the colour that drew its owner Mark to it. You see, he, for most of his working life, has been a chauffeur, and he worked out when he retired that in his chauffeuring career he had driven 1.6 million miles. 1 million of which were going to one airport. Amazing. I salute you, sir. And those miles were done chiefly behind the wheel of a Ford Galaxy. Actually, several Ford Galaxies, one of every single generation. When he then retired, he decided it was time to be selfish, and so wanted a car with no back seats, that was focused on the driver, that was going to be exciting, nice to look at, but also reliable. And he'd always had a little bit of a soft spot for the 370Z, but with the convertible being so rare, finding one in this colour was tricky. To give you some idea of just how rare these are, today on Auto Trader there are 50 370Zs for sale, of which just 6 are the convertible. And allegedly only 2 were ever sold in Britain in this colour. Happily, it took him just a few months to get the car, and now he has it, he has no intention whatsoever of parting with it. And in the time he's had it, he has taken it down to Germany, into France, and when I'm done with this review, he's shortly going to be taking it across the continent on a month-long road trip, going as far as the south of Italy. Fantastic. And very shortly I too shall be doing a few trips to the continent, so if you'd like to follow that, or simply anything that I'm doing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, please do it. It takes a few seconds, costs you absolutely nothing, will help keep you up to date with everything that I post, particularly if you hit the bell icon, and it makes a big difference to me. But back to the car. I've got to say, colour aside, I don't think this is a bad looking thing. Though it does really depend on what angle you look at it and whether the roof is up or down, how you view it. When I first saw it, it was roof down, and I think maybe partly because of the colour, the first thing I thought of was the new BMW Z4. However, put the roof up and it does look a little bit like a Jaguar F-Type that you've picked up from the middle aisle of Aldi. It is slightly awkward in proportion, doesn't quite work. However, roof down, gotta say, I like it a lot. And though Mark certainly does too, in keeping with Japanese car tradition, he has made a few alterations, including a little bit of carbon fibre on the exterior, this carbon fibre wheel on the interior, which I'm not really a fan of, but he's had made extra chunky to suit his large hands. The paddles behind them, incidentally, are entirely standard. The exhaust now has a combination of a Scorpion back box and a centre section made by Zorstworks. And at least one part of that is soon to be replaced. Now, it still has cats on it. In fact, it's got newer, uprated Euro 5 compliant cats on it. But at certain points in the rev range, he says it drones a little bit for his liking and sounds a touch boy racer. So that's going to be tended to. There is also a Z1 long tube intake, which makes a bit more noise and might improve performance, I don't know. Though the car has not had any form of map or the like. So officially speaking, this still makes standard power, which here from the 3.7 litre engine is about 328 horses and 268 pounds-feet of torque. That's about 330 newton meters. The manual gearbox is a 6-speed, but this torque converter automatic is a 7. The suspension also has been replaced with teen items, though the car is not lowered. And I'm thankful for that, because I'm not exactly sure what, but part of this car has scraped in the car park where next to nothing ever does. I think possibly a piece of exhaust, maybe, something very metallic. It's not pleasant and did take me by surprise. At normal speeds, I've got to say the scuttle shake is actually on the good side for a convertible. It's still there, but not disturbing, and I only really notice it on account of the cameras. Without those, I'd say it's very, very good. Buffeting is also very nicely controlled. The cabin's pretty well refined, and though sure this is all beginning to date a little bit, it's also got lots of nice features. Naturally, you've got electric windows and the like, but you also have part electric seats with heating and cooling. That's very nice, and exclusive, I'm told, to the convertible. You've also got stuff like cruise control, of course, air conditioning, a nice old school sat-nav, which can be upgraded a number of different ways. And I think it's a pretty decent place to spend your time. Does it feel quite as nice as a Porsche of the day? Well, no. But nor did it command anywhere near as much money. The curious thing is that today the price differential is closer than it ever was, with one of these being worth upwards of £12,000. And that means it's about the same price as an admittedly slightly earlier Boxster, the 987.1 generation. And of course, the Boxster is always going to be held up as the gold standard for sports cars, chiefly on account of the way that it drives. This having its engine in the front means that not only is it slightly less practical, you've got one boot and it's not particularly big, it's also a bit heavier. This weighs in at around 1,600 kilos. But there are a great number of other cars, much like this on paper, which still drive well. Is this one of them? Let's find out. I was asked over at lunch today, which I had with the owner of this, Mark, and also a lovely chap called James, who this morning brought me his Mark 3.5 Fiesta RS 1800, what one of my greatest surprises is. Well, when I get back, I'm going to tell Mark it's this. Because you know what? This car is ruddy brilliant. I don't, whisper it, even hate the exhaust. Now, it would likely get grating over long distances, and if this were a coupe, it might drone quite badly. But as it's not, and I've got the roof down, it's fine. That little blip on the downshift is addictive too, and though the upshift isn't particularly responsive, nor is it bad enough to really ruin my fun. The best part though, and this is common with many other Zs that I've driven, is the steering. It's got a fantastic weighting to it, makes it very interactive. You've got a lot of faith in the chassis. This is a much, much sportier car, I think, than people ever give it credit for. Setting aside the likes of the Boxster for a moment, if you had, say, a Mazda MX-5, this is going to feel like a more grown-up car. And though the boot space is probably slightly worse, and that unfortunately is an issue for me, this is awesome. It's got plenty of punch too. That engine is really nicely judged. At some point, Mark wants to get it down to Abbey so he can have the Ecutech system installed. And his main motivation for doing that isn't the power that he'll gain, because in reality, you'll never get that much more out of these. Instead, it's the fact that he wants to be able to install the safety map that my buddy Ant has on his. This means that should he be somewhere where he struggles to find high-octane fuel, the car will run safely. It's not, I think, that it's bad at the moment, but he said that on the occasions when he has had to put lower-octane fuel in it, it's not enjoyed it. It is also rather refreshing, having recently driven quite a few modern cars, to get back into something which doesn't really have modes, doesn't have adjustability, doesn't have anything to configure. The dampers on this are not adaptive. There is no sport mode button down here. The blank by the gearbox, in case you're wondering, that in the manual is the one that would turn on or off your rev matching. But even the gearbox itself here doesn't have a sport mode. And in auto mode, it's perfectly pleasant, does a very good job of just pootling along and doing what you need it to. On occasion, like just there, it can be a little bit indecisive, but otherwise, it's fine. The brakes seem okay too, certainly for road usage. I love the acid green they've been painted in. In fact, rather annoyingly, the only bit of this interior that does feel really, really cheap is the surround of the gear lever down here, which is in a kind of a weird crackle black. Yeah, just a little bit rattly, that noise, isn't it? Bit too Honda with a loud exhaust on it. Needs to be smoothed out a little. Oh. Having that bigger displacement too means you can choose to either rev the thing out, go to that 7,500 RPM red line, or simply work the mid-range. And the chassis too feels pretty happy doing whatever you want. I'm not entirely sure what the motivation was with putting the teen suspension on. I'm fairly confident it probably hasn't significantly improved things. But for a car like this, it rides fine. Yeah, it's on the firm side, but also not crashy, nor when at speed overly bouncy. Not only does it have a beautiful and solid weighting to it, it's also got wonderful precision. Feels like there's almost no slop in this chassis whatsoever. The turning is keen, but not overly so, and you get a beautiful granularity through the wheel. You can feel a bit of the texture of the road. And this is further proof, if ever it were needed, that the late 90s to about 2010 really was, I think, the sweet spot for cars. Because this feels pleasingly old school to drive, but it also is reassuringly modern in a lot of other ways, and very, very easy to live with. There are countless specialists around the world for these sorts of things. Getting parts is pretty easy. On occasion, can be a little more expensive than you might think, but worth every penny, and these just do not carry the massive potential balk factor of many of the Porsche equivalents. Visibility, roof down, is fantastic. Roof up, it's, as you would expect, quite compromised. And let's talk of another rival, the BMW Z4. Now, the engines in those I absolutely love, but this, it's got a bit more character, I think, and this steers in a way that is just alien to nearly any modern BMW. It's beautiful. It is clear to me that the people behind the Z cars were proper petrol heads. The BMW, that's a far more confused car than this. And as for the later Z4s with the folding hardtop, they're a much better boulevard cruiser than this. They feel far, far nicer inside. But try and have fun with it, it'll fall apart quickly. This relishes the challenge. I love it. I mean, really, really love it. Tell you what, as retirement presents go, you could do a lot worse than this. So, with that, I want to say a big thank you to Mark for bringing it out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.